Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Citizen Exclusive with your host, Mpoki Thompson. Today's agenda is DIRA 2050. That is the Tanzania Development Vision 2050. With us, we have, I would say, the man of the hour, the man driving this vision from the Ministry of Investment and Planning. That is none other than Professor Kitila Mkumbo. Waziri, welcome to the Citizen Exclusive.
Sana, thank you very much for having me to your interview.
Indeed.
I look forward to it very much.
Yeah, as I mentioned, right now, Tanzania, East Africa, everyone when it comes to about Tanzania's development, we're talking about DIRA 2050.
Sure.
We've laid out a roadmap of how we want to achieve development across different spheres.
Yes.
I want us to start now at what is shaping this vision. We are targeting by the year 2050 to have a GDP of $1 trillion and a per capita income of $7,000. Right now, we are nowhere close to that. However, we believe that through implementation of these strategies, we'll be able to achieve that. I want you to now share with us what annual growth rate will be required consistently for us to achieve that, and what structural reforms are necessary.
So I think, first of all, let us get a little bit into what is into this vision. So DIRA 2050 basically aims to what kind of Tanzania we're looking forward in 2050. We are looking at four main things. We want Tanzania to become, number one, inclusive. Number two, just. So justice becomes a critical issue. Number three, prosperity for all. And number four, self-reliance. So Tanzania 2050, we see it as a country that is, number one, achieves prosperity for everybody. It is much more inclusive. It is a country that cherishes justice, even more importantly, self-reliance. To be able to achieve this grand vision, I would say, we have four main issues. Number one, we have put what we call the foundation of the vision. And here we're talking about governance, peace, security, and stability. We said this is the foundation, which means that without this foundation, it is not possible to achieve the rest of the parameters in the vision. And then we have three main pillars. So number one is strong and competitive economy. So strong, inclusive, and competitive economy. We want our economy to be much more competitive. And secondly, what we call the human capabilities and social development. So the issues of health, education, and all social amenities will be under this particular pillar. And the third one is the question of the environment. So we talk about environmental integrity and climate change resilience. So those are the three main pillars. And we have the foundation, and later we'll talk about the what we call the drivers. So in terms of the grand goals or the targets, we have four main goals, about 17 targets or 18 targets to be more precise. So goal number one is obviously, target number one is to transform Tanzania from the current status of low middle income country to an upper middle income country by 2050. What do we mean by that? The main indicator is the GDP. So the income. So we want the economy to grow from the present value of around $95 billion to $1 trillion by 2050. So we talk about creating a $1 trillion economy. Raise the GDP per capita from the current value of around $1,272 to $7,000 by 2050. We also want by then to end extreme levels of poverty. So these are some of the major targets that we're looking forward in 2050. So it's really about the economy and the human development. This vision is called, it is people-centered vision. It has to be, we are going to measure our progress with respect to development of the people, not just statistics.
Yeah, but Waziri, looking at from a retrospective angle,
Yeah.
one of the visions, as you've mentioned, is to have a per capita income of $7,000.
Yes.
We're currently at 1,200 thereabout,
Yeah.
and also an economy wanted to grow tenfold.
Yes.
We did have Development Vision 2025,
Yes.
which was a vision in 1999.
Yes.
But then 25 years later, we've not met even half of the goals that were set out.
Sure.
Yes, we've made progress,
Yeah.
but by and large, what was strategically supposed to be achieved has not been achieved.
Yeah.
Middle income status, we're now lower middle income status.
Yes.
The vision is to make this development inclusive
Yes.
for all Tanzanians
Yes.
to benefit. Now, when we talk about the 1 trillion GDP, how is that going to translate in every Tanzanian seeing that in a realistic format, that, you know what, our GDP is $1 trillion and I can actually
I can feel it.
Yes.
So this is why we are, pillar number 2 is about human development, human capabilities and social development. And this is where we are saying our development process must be human-centered, in the sense that everything that we do, it has to reflect into people's lives. So it's not just about statistics. It is really about, will people be able to feel it? So number 1, and I will explain this one much more later, because first of all, what went wrong in the first vision? Obviously, we achieved a lot because we moved from a GDP per capita of 453, 2000, to where we are today, 1270 something. So already it means that we are able to move, close to more than almost 5 times. Our GDP moved from, by then was only $13 billion to where we are today, around $95 billion. You'll see that we moved close to more than 6 times, almost. So we made some progress. We did not realize the target that we had, especially economically speaking. And the main reason was that, by the way, Vision 2050 started being implemented much later, because this was crafted in 2000, approved in 2000, but we started implementing 2010, 2011. Why? Because we did not produce the operational plan concurrently. What we have corrected this time around is that we have the vision. We have also approved just last week, a few weeks ago, the parliament approved the operational plan. And these are 2, is what we call long-term perspective plan, which is a 25-year operational plan to implement the vision. We have also produced what we call the 5-year development plan. So already we have the vision implementation instrument in place. And this is a very big factor. And of course, given our current condition, it should be okay. So the question is, how are you going to see that this is reflecting in people's lives?
Yeah.
This is key. So we are going to be taking measure reforms with respect to skills and human capital development, which is key. We will be addressing issues of social development, especially education and health issues, plus also social security. You will see that we are going to be focusing very much on logistics and infrastructure development. This is going to be very important focus. So if you are talking about improving infrastructure, it means that when you are coming to my home like you did today, you'll be enjoying the infrastructure. If we have good infrastructure, people will be able to feel. But much more importantly, we really want to focus on key sectors which drive our economy. And number 1 is agriculture. And the focus here, we have had agriculture which has mainly remained to be at the subsistence level. Our next round, we want to focus to ensure that the agriculture becomes commercial, so
yes.
that our farmers, our peasants are able to make money out of agriculture. Because if people get money, then that's the meaning of growing the economy. We really want to focus very much on manufacturing. So issues of agro processing, because these are the sectors that are going to engage more people. Because the previous one of the weaknesses was that the sectors that were driving the economy were not very much the sector that were involving many people. So, for example, we had very low productivity in agriculture. We did not develop the sector of industrialization very much. And these are the sectors that really are supposed to be driving and including many people.
Yeah.
So to answer your question in a short, we'll be focusing on sectors that are going to develop employment to our people.
Now, you mentioned infrastructure as one of the key pillars that
Yeah.
will enable Tanzania to achieve this
Yes.
the NIRA 2050. However, we are seeing plenty of infrastructure gaps and inefficiencies.
Yeah.
There's been investment. We've partnered with some international private partners, for example, the Port of Dar es Salaam with the DP World, and we have now the SGR, which also has the grand plan of unlocking these landlocked
Yes.
countries. But there is still a massive gap when it comes to infrastructure. Investors still complain about the last mile transportation, about Tanzania not having enough cold rooms, for example, those within the agricultural value chain.
Yes.
There are still a lot of inefficiencies. And also, energy is still a problem.
Yes.
Reliable power, especially to the industrial cluster.
Yeah.
We do not have enough reliable power to support. So when you mention infrastructure, when you mention about these efficiencies, how are we addressing these gaps to make them realistic, to make an investor want to come to Tanzania where they are assured of reliable infrastructure, assured of reliable energy and power to support their businesses?
This is what I was saying. Our 5-year development plan has 4 major reforms, and one of them is energy, logistics, and infrastructure reforms. And in here, we're going to be focusing on improving, those aspects. Of course, we should not forget that we have made massive development over the past 20 years regarding infrastructure development. In this country, 20 years ago, to go to Mwanza, you would have to go through Kenya, Nairobi. It was not easy. Today, you can travel all the way from Twara up to Mwanza on tarmac road. So over the past 20 years, we have done a lot of efforts. We still have gaps, we still have challenges, but we should not forget that we have also made a lot of improvements. And this time around, we'll be even much more aggressive. And of course, even speaking with the energy sector, for example, for the last almost 60 years, Tanzania was able to develop only around 100, 600 megawatts, almost 60 years. But over the last only 2, 3, 4 years, we have been able to add 2,000 megawatts into our national grid. And going forward, our target by 2030, we want to add from 4,000 to 8,000. By 2050, the target is really to have 7,000 megawatts. Huge development. And we think this is important because there is no industrialization without energy. Energy is everything. We really have to focus on the energy sector. So just to let your viewers know, is that the government and the private sector is going to be investing a lot with respect to those areas, including logistics, infrastructure, energy generation. These are very important.
Now, what about the issue of the cost of doing business in Tanzania?
Yeah.
This is experienced not only by foreign investors, but also domestic investors as well. Tanzania is said to have an investment environment that is currently in reform, which is good. We are heading towards a positive direction. However, there are policy irregularities that have been mentioned by some of the investors, but also when we look at the taxation system, we have the taxes that are being imposed by the central government. We have those from the local government. We have those that are sector specific. We have those that are mandatory or statutory. Now, as an investor, if I'm coming to an environment where I am imposed, where I face multiple taxes, it can become a bit disheartening or discouraging for me to invest in that area. What are we doing about the taxation system, the way that these taxes are being sought after from these investors, but also predictability of our laws?
So we have been implementing the national strategy for improving the business environment and the climate the climate environment, investment climate for that matter, the famously known as the blueprint for regulatory reforms to improve business and investment environment. And as we speak, the government has already revised. We are producing the second version of the blueprint, which promised to undertake even further reforms with the view to improving our investment climate and the business environment. And we shall be taking some of the radical reforms in a number of areas, particularly regulatory reforms. I think that findings show we still have too many regulatory authorities.
Yeah.
and we think that the businesses are over-regulated. So we shall be taking measures to ensure that we reduce the burden of regulatory authorities on our businesses. We shall also be ensuring that the regulatory authorities are only able to charge fees to enable them to do their operations, not really to generate profit. Because otherwise, if these regulatory authorities will continue charging fees for purposes of profit, they become another TRA.
Absolutely.
So these are the areas that we are going to be looking at.
Yeah.
But as you're aware, our president formed a commission to undertake a comprehensive review of our tax system, and the commission has already finished the report, and we're just waiting for the opportune moment for the president to avail this report. And we believe that the tax reform commission report will go a long way to improving our tax environment, because these are the issues that the investors are complaining. Having said that, we should acknowledge the fact that over the past 10 years, the Tanzanian environment for doing business has improved radically. As we speak, Tanzania is among the top 10 countries in Africa with a relatively better investment and business environment. 10 years ago, Tanzania was nowhere to be seen in the league of the African countries in terms of easy of doing business. But today, Tanzania, we have even actually beaten some of the countries that were seen to be very competitive. And our aim by 2030, we want to be among the top 3. So I want to send a clear message to businesses and investors that Tanzania will continue ensuring that our business environment improves, our investment climate becomes the best in Africa, so that they are able to come and work with us.
Okay, but Minister, of course, you have mentioned about Tanzania now being one of the most attractive investment destinations, which is indeed true.
Yeah.
But oftentimes there are concerns about the unpredictability of the laws, and also the government in place just deciding that this does not serve the purpose of nationalism, does not serve the purpose of Tanzanians, so we're going to change. We saw what happened within the mining sector, which brought about many cases, and now we have been paying billions of dollars to these investors who have sued us as a country. What I want you to assure investors and Tanzanians in general is the assurance that predictability of investment laws is going to be there. Predictability of taxation laws is going to be there. It's not just going to be the whims of the government in place to decide.
Certainly. First of all, we have undertaken some of the major reforms in our laws. We now have a new Tanzania Investment and Special Economic Zones Act, and this is the major law when it comes to investment. But what is more important, the government is going to propose a new law. We'll be coming up with a bill which is called Business and Investment Facilitation Act. In this act, what we are proposing as a government is that any law, any regulation that you're going to suggest which touches businesses, you won't be allowed to pass it or to do anything with that law without consulting a certain body. So once we enact a law with respect to businesses and investment, there will be a body which specializes specifically to ensure that laws are not changed abruptly. Any regulation, be it at the local government, will not be allowed without being approved by a certain body. So there will be one law, which is going to be the mother law regarding facilitation of businesses and investment. So that is aimed at ensuring that there is predictability. So we'll continue improving.
Okay, and now this also brings about the question of separation of power. I know in any democracy, it might be a bit of a sketchy subject, but there are clear separation or demarcations where we have the legislature, we have the judiciary, we have the executive. But oftentimes there's been an overlap of the executive usurping powers of the judiciary, but also of the legislature.
I'm not sure about that.
It is debatable, but from a practical perspective, my point is, as we are ring-fencing this law, there's going to be a special body that has, I would say, supreme power as far as the mandate concerning that law is concerned. How are we ring-fencing that from executive power interference?
No, I mean, we are a country of rule of law.
Yes.
Rule of law means that we have to do everything that we do in accordance with the laws that we have. It is clear the role of the government is to implement the laws which have been passed by the parliament. The role of the judiciary is to interpret these laws. The role of the legislature is to enact laws. So I think we are going to follow these things. I mean, so there is no way a government can wake up in the morning and say, I don't want to implement this law. If you don't want, you'll have to follow the proper channels, which is taking to the parliament. So I think that the main answer to that one is that we will have to continue being a country that respects the rule of law. That is the solution.
Absolutely.
And in today's world, doing business requires respect of rule of law. This is fundamental. We have decided to be a democracy. We have decided to be a country that respects the rule of law. We have to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, we're talking about public-private partnerships.
Yes.
That is central to us achieving this goal because, I mean, of course, our fiscal capacity does not allow us to invest massively using our own revenue generation avenues. So how are we working with the private sector? I understand that there was a revision of the $1 trillion target. Initially, it was around 700 billion thereabout. But then through consultation with the private sector, it was scaled up to 1 trillion. Can you tell us now, how is the government working more closely with private sector to ensure that Development Vision 2050 becomes a reality?
Yes, I mean, as you correctly pointed out, the engine of implementing this vision is really the private sector, because we need the private sector to be able to raise the necessary capital, but also for financing the various development projects. We are talking about by 2030, we would like, the value or the capital that is needed, the level of investment that we need to be able to achieve the target that we have set in that vision is trillion shillings 477. That is massive. The previous vision, in the previous FYDP, we had around 144 trillion. This time we're talking about 477 trillion shillings. So it's a massive investment. And we are saying 70% of this will have to come from the private sector, and only 30% will come from the public sector, which means that we really have to protect, we have to nurture, we have to develop, we have to value our private sector. And this is exactly what we are going to be doing, and this is exactly what our president actually wishes. And as you know, since President Samia came into power, I think one of her legacies is going to be, developing the private sector. She has this philosophy of opening up, which led into the 4 R's. So I just want to promise our private sector that we will actually take all the necessary steps to ensure that we are able to develop our private sector, protect it, promote it, nurture it, so that it serves the purpose that we have. And coincidentally and luckily, the president has tasked me to be the custodian of the private sector development. It is in my instrument, and I want to promise that I will be working very closely with the private sector, not just as stakeholders, as partners. Private sector will be our partners, not just stakeholders. So we will have to jointly discuss challenges and jointly propose solutions. We will change the approach. What we have had is that you have the government and the private sector sitting together, and one side has the questions, the other side has the solutions. I think we have to change. We'll have to jointly discuss these challenges. We'll have to also jointly propose solutions, and then assign activities, who is doing what, to be able to achieve what we want to achieve. So there will be a new approach on how we deal with the private sector. We are going to be moving from the stakeholders to partners, from opinion providers to solution providers. So it is going to be a joint effort. It's not like the government has all the solutions and you guys in the private sector have all the answers, all the questions. No, I think the government has questions, also has solutions. And we believe the private sector also has questions, they also have the solutions.
And are we refining the public-private partnership? At times, it is said that this framework does not often serve the interests of the host country, because an investor comes to your country, they want to invest, they're looking at the return on investment, definitely, but also the government looks at what will be the retention in terms of the profit to Tanzanians. And this brings about some sort of a vague setup surrounding any public-private partnership investment, and we have seen rallying calls of discontent from Tanzanians whenever there is a mega investment project that involves an external partner who's coming to invest, because they feel that they do not get to benefit, but it's just a few individuals who get to benefit. Now, how do we translate this into a more meaningful and more impactful PPP setup in the country?
So, I mean, there are two issues here. Issue number one is the fact that this is a country with a long history of socialistic-oriented development philosophy, where the government was used to be doing everything, including selling beers. So the private sector in this country, I always say this, is about 30 years younger than the Kenyan private sector. Because while our friends continues in the same trajectory since 1960 when they got independence, for us, we only lived with the private sector for 5 years until 1967. And later on, we shifted into the state-based economy until 1990s, actually, to be precise, around 2000 during Mkpa's presidency. Yes. So we still have those tendencies.
Socialism.
Yes, socialism. And we still look at businesses with a lot of suspiciousness. And we are coming from a history where making money for a black man was seen to be, problematic. We were oriented to be employed by the government. So when we see people starting doing business, big business, we always have these question marks. So it is our responsibility as a government, as the private sector, to continue educating ourselves in the government, because the problem begins with us in the government. There are people within the government who still have a lot of questions regarding private sector engagement. We have to continue educating our public. But the second issue is the genuine concerns. At the end of the day, we really have to be clear. What are we getting from the foreign investors, and what are we not getting from them? Number one, we are getting from them the capital. We need capital. This is critical. We need technology. We need experience in running things. So these three things are key. At the end of the day, these guys, when they come to work with us, they are here to do business and therefore to make profit. So when they start making a profit, we should not be, concerned. They are here to make a profit. And at the end of the day, they will repatriate this profit to their countries. So this has to be clear. We'll have gotten our taxes, we'll have gotten the technologies here. They are going to bring a capital, but they will also have to get their profit to their own countries. So this has to be clear to our people. Eventually, at the end of the day, a country is developed by the country men and women. Countries are not developed by foreign investors. Foreign investors just make a contribution. But there is no any country which you are going to say, this country was developed by foreign investors alone. No. Which means we really have to focus on developing our own local investors so that they work in tandem with the foreign investment, which is why the government is very clear. There are certain, on two areas, we are very clear that there are certain businesses which will have to be done by the Tanzanians. For example, in your media industry, our media houses, we can do this. Why should somebody come here, to impose our media? They have to do this. There are international medias, yes, of course, but medias will have to be owned by Tanzanians. Even though you're a foreign company, we'll have to see our people running this media. So we are very clear in the law, but also that with respect to local content, we want our people, for example, now there is a massive project coming called LNG, which is a $42 billion project. A bigger chunk of the money into that project will go into the construction process. So we are very clear that our people will have to be engaged in the construction process, because that is where a lot of this money is going to go. So those are the two aspects that we are very clear as a government.
Minister, I understand the government's vision, the government's intentions, but just to take it back a little bit, you mentioned about media, and luckily you've hit a nerve there because that's the industry that I'm in.
Yes.
And the regulation which states that the majority shareholders need to be Tanzanian as opposed to foreigners. From a practical sense, that is both negative and positive. The reason why I'm saying that is that we do not have a conducive infrastructure that enables Tanzanian media to thrive as a business.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking from private media.
Sure.
For example, right now we have debts that the government owes us from advertising, and we're not getting that money.
Yeah.
So when we look at
which is a problem already.
It is a problem
because now your main advertising customer is the government.
It's the government.
Where we're going, your main customer should be the private sector.
Should be the private sector. Yeah, but my point is, when we put these limiting regulations and on the ground, we've not created an environment that allows local businesses to thrive. Isn't that does that sort of limit the growth rate of these businesses?
What do you mean putting environment not to allow the local business to grow?
No, from a practical sense, like I mentioned, there is money that is owed to media that has not been paid by the government, and there is no accountability despite promises that have been made. And yet we have laws and regulations that say foreign investors, this is the limitation, this is the cap, you shouldn't go above 50%.
So if the foreign investor was allowed, how would that change?
No, there is enough capital flow. So that means our businesses will be able to continue operations without being worried
So
about...
you can actually make a case and say, okay, maybe you open a little bit more, but you're allowed to go to DSC, right?
Yes.
You can get capital from the stock exchange. But those are the challenges. But the intention is noble. Because just imagine our media industry is owned by foreigners. It would be terrible. So I agree with those challenges. And the solution, the short term, is to ensure that as a government, we pay for those advertisements because it is your money. But in the long run, where we are going, the main customer should not be the government. It should be the private sector.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So this is important. It means that we also have to raise awareness among our businesses that, hey, advertisement is good for your businesses, and to have that symbiotic relationship that we need each other. Yeah.
So at the moment, we're speaking about the budget framework for 2026, 2027.
Yes.
And oftentimes we have some of these auditing bodies that provide analysis of the budget. There have been concerns by different sectors. When we look at it from a sectoral approach, those who are in mining, those who are in the telecom industry, those who are in the financial sector, those who are in logistics, they analyze the budget framework and look at what will the new finance bill look like and how will it affect our businesses. From a government lens, how are you addressing some of these concerns that are often raised by the private sector whenever a finance bill comes and there is a lot of taxes, levies that are imposed on the business?
But by the way, I mean, the tax, there is a period of tax review. So between December and up to May, actually, it is called a tax review period. And during this period, you have a lot of engagement with the private sector, within the government, and everybody. So by the time the Minister of Finance reads the finance bill in June, a lot of engagement would have taken place. And during the process, there are a lot of compromises between the government and the private sector. And by then, a lot of things the government would have given in, but not all of them. So eventually, the government needs taxes to be able to run the country.
Yeah.
And not all these taxes will be welcomed by the private sector. And if you're a Minister of Finance, you need the money yesterday, not tomorrow. Which means that you really have to fill the gap, especially now where you see that donor funding is shrinking, which means we have to do a lot of local resource mobilization, including taxation. So, but the point here is that, yes, they make a lot of comments, but don't forget, by the time the Minister of Finance reads the budget in the Parliament, a lot of engagement would have happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you've talked about local mobilization of revenue.
Yeah.
This also brings to the fore the issue of broadening the tax base.
Sure.
So does broadening the tax base meaning that there's going to be more taxes to the SMEs or all these other sectors that feel well, at the moment they're already heavily being taxed by the government? Or what does that look like? Or does it also involve removing some of the nuanced levies and taxes that are being complained about by the private sector? So just explain to us the broadening.
The main point here is formalization. Almost 80% of our businesses are operating in the informal sector, which means that the taxman does not have direct access to them. So we aim by 2030 to try to ensure that we are able to formalize at least 50% of the businesses. If you do that, formalization means, for example, I can tell you 26% of our economy is coming from the agricultural sector. And a very small proportion of people in the agriculture are paying taxes. So agricultural tax sector is one of the sector that is almost untaxed. So we have to formalize. The focus now will be on the volume. So it's not. We better have bigger number of taxpayers paying small. Additively, you get big taxes. So you'll see us talking more about formalization to ensure that our businesses are formalized, so that everybody contributes something to the national coffers. At the moment, we are talking about roughly 2 million taxpayers for these 60 million people. Yeah. And the workforce in Tanzania is around 33 million. So if it's 33 million, if we are able to get at least half of those paying taxes, would be a very different country. So really the main answer here is formalization.
Yeah, and then formalization and broadening the tax base, I think some of the discontent by Tanzanians has been that, for example, the creative industry. Yeah. The creative industry at the moment does not benefit much from what they do. Yeah. I'm talking about those who use the digital platforms, the content creators. We talk about Kenya gaining revenue from using TikTok and these meta-owned platforms. But for Tanzania, that is not the case. Yet, we are supposed to pay the 5%.
Because we started late.
But then what is taking us so long? Why are
so I think you will see, because we have identified 9, they are called 9 transformative sectors that are key to driving our economy. Sector number 9 is called sports and creative industry. We have recognized as a country that this is an important one, because for so long, the creative industry in this country was treated much like an informal sector. Sure. Was not seen to be a very serious sector to contribute to the economy. But at the moment, it is growing at the rate of 17%. Is the fastest growing sector in Tanzania. So we have now mainstreamed to see to it that this is an important economic sector. So you'll see a lot of efforts going to improving this sector, because number one, it has a lot of potential, but two, a lot of our young people are there, which means is an employment generating sector. So we must pay attention to it.
Yeah, but shouldn't the improvement of the environment have come before the 5% withholding, the 5% taxation? I mean, because you're taxing someone who's barely making peanuts at the moment.
We have heard the voices, and I'm sure that the Minister of Finance will be doing something going forward.
Okay. Yeah. Now, the Development Vision 2050 is also heavily reliant on natural resources as being the key driver. Yeah. But we also have a vision to industrialize Tanzania.
Yes.
Natural resources are susceptible to environmental shocks, issues to do with climate change. So how are we fortifying this vision to ensure that it's not heavily affected by natural disaster, by these external shocks?
So what did we mean by natural resources? Here, really, we are talking about our mineral sector, minerals.
Yes.
We are talking about our oil and gas sectors. And the point that we are talking about here is really value addition. Tanzania has been, just like the other African countries, has been exporting minerals over the past 50 years, and is a very important sector into our export portfolio. But the unfortunate thing is that we have been exporting them in raw form. And there is no country that develops by exporting raw materials. Exportation of raw materials is a gateway to poverty. So we are changing policy-wise that we have to add value in the country as part of our industrialization agenda. That is also with regard to agricultural products. We have been exporting our agricultural product in raw form, be it cashew nut, coffee or tea. And going forward, we shall be focusing very much on agro-processing. So this is the agenda. So it is heavily connected to industrialization, because raw materials, they provide value on their own, but they also serve as important raw materials for our industries. And this is what we are engaging our partners to tell them that, hey, when you come here, you want to invest in your minerals, please also plan to add value within the country.
Yeah, now let's talk about the population dividends. By the year 2050, Tanzania will be home to roughly 100 million people.
Yes.
We are currently already one of the most populated countries in Africa.
Yeah.
But that doesn't directly translate to the human capital that is at our disposal.
Yeah.
And when we look at 25 years from now, population of 100 million, it will directly translate having an expanded population of young people who are looking for opportunities. This might create a social instability if we do not create enough
If we don't handle it properly.
Yes.
So the population growth rate is both a blessing and it can also be a curse at sometimes if it's not properly handled. So we are talking about a country where 76% of our population is below 35 years. If you look at the workforce, labor force in Tanzania is around 33 million. And 24 million of those will be young people aged between 15 and 39 years, which is around 72%. So we have a very strong labor force as a country. But we should also acknowledge that our population growth rate is a bit too high.
Yeah.
Because the fertility rate at the moment is 4.8 children per woman, which is among the highest. And the standard in Africa is around 3.2. So we are well above even the African average. And we think that this is not very healthy. But, you know, the medicine to contain the population, the rapid population growth rate is education, which is why we are now investing very much in education. From 2028, every Tanzanian kid will have to go up to Form 4. So the basic education changes here. Secondary education becomes universal. And if you keep kids longer in schools, that's the best way to reduce the fertility rate, because, you know, they will end up having 2 to 3 children. So that is number one. But number two, we have to invest in skills development.
Yes, there's a huge
so that our young people, as they get out of the education systems, they have the proper skills that are needed for them to be able to fit into this rapidly changing world. And not just to be employed here. We like to produce global citizens so that they can go and work anywhere in the world. Because our friends in Asia and in Europe, they have a problem. While we have a very rapid population growth rate, theirs is actually going down. So this is they think in the next 10 years, if they are not careful, they will have to be employing robots, not human beings, because they don't have the labor force. It means that we can become labor suppliers to many countries in Asia and in Europe. So we really have to prepare our young people not just to be Tanzanians, but also to be global citizens. That is only possible if they have the appropriate skills. So you will see a lot of reforms in the education sector, in our technical education system, for purposes of ensuring that our young people are properly prepared.
Yeah. And there's been this question about the language.
Yes.
Tanzania is said to miss out on many opportunities because of language barrier. Some are opposed to it. Some say that it is a reality. I'm speaking particularly about English.
Yes.
Does the education system recognize the need of having a workforce that is internationally compatible to work in different markets? How are we addressing that? It might seem very benign, but it is a big factor.
Important.
Yes.
It is very important. I mean, and this is really my position.
Yeah.
I think that Tanzanians, they really have to be conversant and competent, at least in 2 languages, Kiswahili and English. This is a must. Every Tanzanian must be able to speak fluently, eloquently, in English and in Kiswahili. There is no doubt about that. Now, whether you use this language as a medium of instruction or not, to me, that is not the point.
Okay.
The point, we must take all the necessary steps to ensure that our young people, they have to be conversant with these 2 languages. And then, of course, add the other languages. For example, you know, Mandarin is becoming very important. If we have a bit of French, you have a bit of Spanish. But these 2 is a must. And our current education system should be designed as such to produce language competent Tanzanians. This is important.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Waziri, recently you were in Dodoma. There was a big event that was hosted by CRDB, one of the biggest banks in the
Imbeju,
country, the Imbeju program. I want us to focus a bit about that because these are some of the key initiatives that will enable Tanzania achieve the Development Vision 2050. It focuses on youth, women, and also MSMEs. Just tell us, because you were part and parcel of the initiative, how important are these programs such as the Imbeju in helping us achieve that goal?
It is very important because we have had problems in this country in terms of when young people start businesses, they face two main problems. They don't have capital access and they have limited skills. And what Go Green and the Imbeju program is doing is providing a mechanism much more simplified for young people to be able to get, number one, capital, especially for micro and small medium enterprises and for startups. So this is the focus of that program. And secondly, they also do training so that, the aspect of financial literacy. For so many years, we took it for granted that, everybody will know how to handle money. We never thought that actually handling money is a discipline by itself, is an important profession by itself. So financial literacy is a key component of that program. And we think they're helping the government. They have $200 million, small but very important because it's around 500 billion shillings.
Yeah.
And our president is also giving out 200 billion shillings. So altogether, if you combine, so I think this is important, and we thank CRDB for coming up with this initiative. Of course, they're getting funding from GCF, the Green Climate Fund. So they're getting 100 million, and then CRDB is also adding 1 million. So we have $200 million dollars for that program. Otherwise, it's a very good initiative, and so the government is going to be scaling up these kind of programs to ensure that our young people have access to capital and necessary skills.
Yeah, and you mentioned that it has an element of green innovation.
Yes.
And I want us to just look a little bit in brief about that, because sustainability, green innovation is key, because again, it is an area that will ensure there is consistent development across different spheres. Can you talk about the Imbeju's green innovation and how it ties into the government's commitment when it comes to sustainability?
Yeah, because one area that the government is focusing on is green energy, for example. So ensuring that our people are able to use what we call nishati safi. So say, for example, clean cooking initiatives, which is a very important initiative by President Samia. So energy is one of the sectors, and that is what CRDB is also doing. And the other one is agriculture. So issues of irrigation, for example, drip irrigation is a key component of that one. So I think it marries very well with our own development initiatives. And because the program itself is organized in a way that to contribute to the realization of the Vision 2050. So I think it is perfectly aligned with the government development efforts. Yeah.
And last but not least on that, the training and mentorship. We cannot overemphasize the importance of this, because when we're dealing with the minority groups such as women, but also youth, training and mentorship is pivotal.
Of course.
Imbeju, I've realized that. CRDB is doing that through that program. Can you tell us now, how does that translate to some of the efforts that the government is undertaking when it comes to mentorship, to training youth and creating prosperity?
So, I mean, this is what I was saying. I mean, the government, first of all, is coming up with the startup policy and the law. Because startups in this country was seen to be part of the informal economy. And there was no any formal recognition of the startups. We have now recognized, and we are even coming up with the policy and the law. And that is exactly what CRDB is doing. Secondly, we are going to be engaging into very serious mentorship programs. So apprenticeship is becoming core, and there will be a law coming which is going to mandate all industries, be it in agriculture, in services, in manufacturing, to ensure that it is now becomes mandatory for every employment setting to have internship programs for them to be able to do a proper training of skills. Because we always confuse and we blame universities that these guys are coming out of university without any skills.
Yeah.
Globally, universities are very conservative institutions. There are things that make a university. So in universities, you are not taught these very basic skills, which is why we say universities educate. They don't necessarily train. Training should be undertaken by employers, which is why it is important to have a very close working relationship between universities and industries. So you are coming from the journalism background. So the university will teach you the basic principles of journalism, the philosophy, the principles, the mechanics. But it is at Mwananchi where you learn the actual skills of journalism. So, they have to complement each other from what is taking place at the School of Journalism and what is taking place at Mwananchi. To think that a School of Journalism will teach you every skill is being unrealistic. So there is no any replacement of training taking place at workforce. So which is why the government is coming up with a very clear guideline that every employment setting will have to include internship as part of their processes, so that we get education and training. This is important. Yeah.
And it's good that you've mentioned about the skills that individuals need to have as they enter the job market.
Yeah.
That has been a gap that has been noticed.
Yes.
Employers complain about that,
Yes.
that the universities produce half-baked graduates, which
Always,
again...
always. Even Harvard produces half-baked graduates.
Indeed. So it's good that the government has noticed that, and through the Education Ministry, we're coming up with plans. It would be remiss if I do not touch on the startup ecosystem, the startup space in Tanzania. We normally follow the investment flow into Africa and what portion is contributed or is extended to Tanzania from foreign investors. We oftentimes perform poorly compared to our neighbors, compared to other countries. There is even this big term,
The remittances.
Remittances, absolutely. So how is the government addressing the startup ecosystem, access to capital? There was the startup funding. We saw that the Ministry of Finance, the government had committed to create a coffer, a financial coffer, where startups will be able to gain capital. But the implementation so far hasn't been as encouraging as one would hope. So what is the promise from your ministry? You're in charge of investment and planning.
So we are in very advanced stages discussing the mechanisms for facilitating capital availability to startups and young people in general. So there are ideas that are flowing, and at an opportune moment, there are people talking about having a special fund, for example, youth empowerment fund or youth investment fund. Some people are even thinking of coming up with a youth and entrepreneurship bank, for example. These ideas that are flowing, and we have given our technical teams to analyze and advise the government appropriately. And I believe that before the end of this year, the government would have come up with a proper framework on how do we facilitate capital availability to startups and also to SMEs and young people in general. So that is number one. Regarding remittances, there are a lot of issues. One of them is cultural. Tanzanians are known. When they go abroad, they want to come back tomorrow. I've lived in the UK and in many other countries in the foreign land. It is very common for Tanzanians to wanting to come back. They go there for a specific purpose, and when they finish, they want to come back immediately. While they are friends, even with your neighbors, Kenyans, Ugandans, even Rwandese, while they are outside there, they want to stay. They want to work there. They want to earn life there. So there was this cultural orientation. I'm not going to say whether we are too much patriotic, but I think it's just a cultural orientation. We love coming back. to our country. I remember when I was doing my PhD, I was with my colleagues, a number of them. I was offered an opportunity to be teaching at the university that I was doing my PhD. I said, no, I'm going back home. And my friends, we were about 12. And I think about 7 to 8 of my friends remained behind. And even the wives of our friends. My wife was eager to come back yesterday, you know. But actually, her friends were, they say, what is wrong with you? You have to stay here. She was working, but as soon as we finished our PhD, immediately we wanted to come back. So there is that cultural orientations. A number of Tanzanians go out and they want to come back immediately, which is why the number of Tanzanians living abroad compared to our friends is smaller than ours. But I think it is now developing. But for many years, this is an area that we never formalized. Our friends started recording the number of diaspora many years ago. We just started recently. Now our embassies and our high commissions are required to register all Tanzanians living in their respective countries so that we get the number, because only a few years ago, we never even knew who was living where.
Yeah.
So as we go along, we are going to improve. But again, things are changing now. You see now Tanzanians are establishing themselves abroad.
Yes.
I know a lot of young people who went to study in Canada. They have no idea of coming back. They have settled in Canada. They're working, in different establishments, very professional. Yeah. So I think we are changing, and I believe that going forward, we should be able to catch up.
Yeah. Now, you're looking at it from a cultural perspective, but now let's look at it from a regulatory perspective.
Yes.
Investment.
Yeah.
Because if I, as a Tanzanian diaspora, move to the US to work and I want to invest back home, there are limitations that would not make me feel the need or be persuaded to invest in Tanzania. Now, let's talk about that a bit, because this has been a point of concern.
It has been a concern.
It has been but what is the government doing?
I'm not sure if that is a really serious barrier.
It does impact even the remittances.
Look, India is the country in the world which is known to be, I think, the most diaspora. They have the largest diaspora global. No country beats India. But India doesn't offer dual citizenship. Is one of the countries that they have refused to give dual citizenship, and we are going to adopt their system, which they give what they call special status.
Yeah, special status.
So we shall also be giving our diaspora special status, so that when they come back home, they can, invest just like any other person. So we are going to ease in their life for that. We have heard about their voices, and we think their voices are genuine. And the government is going to be providing that special status, but not yet dual citizenship.
Okay. Yeah, because dual citizenship, again,
it's a different issue.
It is a different issue, very contentious. Yeah. But we do hope that for us to see an increased level of remittances, development.
We should, because it is controversial, because look here, Kitila, I'm a Tanzanian. I never chose to be a Tanzanian. So being a citizen of a certain country is really a God-given right. And you don't want to rob somebody's right like that one just because I have decided to move somewhere to find good life. So as Kitila, I have no idea why we should not be recognizing our citizens wherever they are. Because they never chose to be Tanzanians. It is a God-given right, and you don't take God-given right easily.
Nationality by birth.
Yes, but anyway, this is a controversial issue. We don't have easy answers for that matter.
So just to conclude, Minister, Vision 2050. What is that one big threat that might derail its implementation from a practical approach?
Yes, that is a very good question. So, one big threat is continue doing business usual. Continue doing things the way we do. Vision 2050 implementation requires us to undertake, among other things, mindset change. We have to change the way we do things. Beginning with simple, to complex issues. And I'll give you one example. Tanzanians are known to be late, for example. This doesn't require donor funding. You say, we are going to meet at 10 and somebody comes at 11. So we are saying, and this is not just for the government, it is for everybody. It starts with recognizing, number one, we have set very high targets. These are very ambitious. They are achievable, but they're very ambitious. These cannot be achieved by walking. We can only achieve them by running. So every Tanzanian must recognize that. And therefore, we really have to undertake some cultural reorientation so that we get rid of some of our cultural behaviors that they are so much part of us. So like this vision cannot be achieved by thinking that the role of bringing development is government's role. And for us, we are here to receive the development. So we have to change from as leaders, but also our people. How do we change as leaders? We have to stop preaching that the government is going to bring 1, 2, 3, 4. We have to change that. We have to tell people that development is a collective endeavor. We have to work together. Obviously, the government will have a bigger responsibility. But you know what? If you are taking your kid to school, there is something the government must do. Number one, the government must employ teachers. That is not a role of the citizen. But don't tell me that your school doesn't have a toilet and you're waiting for the government to do that. While your kid comes from your home, has a toilet, and you're okay, your kid at a school doesn't have a toilet. Please, so we really have to agree as a country that there is no any one individual whose role is to develop others. We have to agree that development is a collective endeavor. So in short, one big threat is continue doing things business usually.
Okay. Well,
this is the main threat.
Minister, we'll end on that note.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Asante sana. Asante sana.
You were with me, Mpoki Thompson, for the Citizen Exclusive. We were with Professor Kitila Mkumbo, the Minister for Planning and Investment. Until next time, that's a wrap.